overnight, I went from being totally in the black to like deeply in the red. And there's two things that I did that turned everything around.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Drew Donaldson with me. Drew, thank you for joining me today.
Nice to be here, man. I appreciate you having me on.
You started out working in like a marketing agency. You ultimately left a marketing agency to form your own and kind of do some coaching work as well. So I'd like to start at the beginning of this segment and talk about what it was actually like to work at a marketing agency. If someone's going to, this is what they're aspiring to be, they want to work at a marketing agency, what is it really like? So what was it like?
Well, when I was still in film school, this was kind of the dawn of business video on the internet. So it wasn't this like people weren't running video ads. It just wasn't like a big thing for most businesses at the time. And so when I was still in college, I opened up a production company that was specialized in this because I'd gotten really good at making, high budget looking things in film school for very little money. And so I used that experience to take to the business world and say, hey, listen, I can make web commercials for you for like next to nothing. And they'll look like these Hollywood movies and it'll be awesome. And so I did that for a few years. And I really struggled because I could not figure out how to grow this business. And I was looking at these other production companies that popped up because, there's blood in the water. Like everybody knows this is coming. So all these production companies pop up. They're all doing all this work. And their work quality was like bad. It just wasn't good. My stuff had been in film festivals. I'd won awards and I just couldn't figure out how to crack the nut. And I was like, it's got to be marketing. That's the piece. That's the missing piece. I don't know anything about marketing. All I know how to do is write a good script, shoot a good film, and put it online. I got to be missing that piece. And so I started obsessing over that. And then that led me to getting a job working internally at a university in New York as the head of their video marketing program. And the goal there was to insource from an agency. So put an agency out of business, or not out of business, but close that contract and insource all that internally to the business. So again, because I had this experience of like making stuff for cheap, and this is a nonprofit university, like I was a good fit for this. But during that time, I learned a ton about marketing and just like how to grow something and how to use Facebook ads and like just all the little like tactical stuff that I was missing. And then I just got more and more obsessed and I read more and more books. And so I did leave that eventually, and I worked in the agency world, and I didn't work in someone else's agency for very long. I only lasted about 6 months. So I don't even think it's on my LinkedIn anymore because it was such a flash in the pan. Because the one thing that I learned in those 6 months was how little agencies value the people that work at the agencies. There is a churn and burn mentality, and anyone in ad world will tell you that it is how do we squeeze as much juice out of these people before they quit. There is no sense of like long-term loyalty or like making it so that people want to grow. Like there's none of that.
Can you share with me the size of the agency? Is this like an international company, a
Oh,
national, small?
yeah,
What was it?
no, this was big boy agency. This is like arguably the largest agency in the world. Or I should say agency conglomerate. And I won't mention them by name. That for anyone in advertising, you know who I'm talking about, especially if you're the churn and burn. But the reality is like working there, they want a 23-year-old to come in, burn them out over a series of 6 to 9 months, and then get a new 22-year-old in, and just they would go through. And I saw more people quit or get fired and get replaced in those 6 months than I'd ever seen in any of the other jobs I'd ever held. And I was like, this is not what I want. And after that, I was like, well, how do I take all this stuff I've accumulated in terms of knowledge and actually turn it into something? And that's when I started getting into like the consulting. So I did that for a while. I was a consultant for a number of years at a publishing company in New York. And then that's kind of when I decided, well, let me go and see what is the next step. And that's really where I fell into coaching, because it was this idea of like, well, I can still, instead of selling really high ticket stuff, what if I sold low ticket, but I sold volume? And so that's really how I got into the coaching sphere.
What was that transition like going from consultant to coach? Was that pretty seamless, kind of similar but different? What was that like?
No, well, it was kind of this combination of market forces all playing together, because it happened right at COVID. So my plan was to launch after I was done with this kind of consulting gig. Like I knew I kind of had a year left, and I was like, all right, what am I going to do next? And so I was like, well, I'll launch an agency, and I'll focus on these specific things that I know there's a market need for. And so then COVID hit, and I was like, well, no one's going to buy anything from me. I might as well just talk to business owners and see if this is actually plausible. Like, let's pretend COVID wasn't happening. Would you buy this? Right? No pressure, because I know you don't have any money to buy anything. Just tell me. And that was actually that year was the most eye-opening experience, because no one wanted what I was selling.
Let's hang on that for a second. So I want you to think about the first couple of people you spoke to where you had that conversation. How did you dip your toes in that water and reach out to these businesses? What was that like for you?
A few of them came through the local chamber of commerce. So I joined the chamber of commerce because my initial thought was I want to work with small and local businesses, because like my family are small business owners. So I'm kind of grew up in that world. I know their challenges. I know what it's like being a small business owner. So I really thought like, all right, that's a strong angle for me. Like I think I could make something work if I'm just talking to small business owners. And so I between cold calling people and following up from people in the chamber and saying, hey, I'm a chamber member too. Like, can we jump on a call? To people referring me and saying, hey, this person's looking for a marketing agency. Also reaching out to business owners from my past that I knew would be be willing to be like, yeah, I'll take a look. Give me your pitch. I'll tell you what I think. So it was kind of a mixed bag. But the nice part about COVID, and I say this with a big asterisk next to it, the nice part was that everybody was lonely. So everybody wanted to talk to somebody because everybody was isolated. So like it didn't take a lot of like persistence to get people on the phone. I don't think I had anyone really turn me down. Like everybody was just like, yeah, man, I got nothing going on. I'll jump on the call with you.
It's neat. I was just I spoke to a nurse entrepreneur, spoke with her. It's probably been, a couple months at this point, but I was actually editing her video the other day, and she was talking about the effect that COVID had on her and growing her business, and had a very similar outlook where it was like, these people are very lonely. And before, people, they were all about meeting in person and no one wanted to meet online. And then everything happened with the pandemic, and all of a sudden people are much more open to like, quick, jump on a call, let's chat, let's talk about stuff. And all of a sudden the big world almost seems like it got a lot smaller with people coming together in a weird kind of way. Very, very interesting. And I love they talk about joining the Chamber of Commerce. I never would have thought about that. So I think that's a really good resource for people that have a small business or looking to tap into small businesses and small business owners.
And that's the whole thing, is like my business has changed dramatically since then. Like knowing my business now, I'm not a member of the chamber anymore. I wouldn't join a chamber, because the types of businesses I serve aren't going to be found in chambers of commerce for the most part. Like these are national organizations or national entrepreneurs. They're not operating on the local level. Now, if you do run a local marketing business or any type of like where your market is local small businesses, yeah, Chamber of Commerce and the like are great to start, because you already overcome that familiarity gap where you can use that. Oh yeah, hey, I'm a fellow chamber member. I am a fellow LATIP member, whatever those other groups are. And instantly get that like, oh yeah, sure, I'll jump on a call. Like, if you're a member, you're not just randomly cold calling me, I know where you come from. So
let's talk about the transition from being a consultant coach and then creating your current agency. What was that like? How did you go about making that transition and deciding this was the right thing for you at this point in time?
After that whole experience, like that's kind of what made me want to go into coaching, because I was like, well, no one wants to buy these agency services. And you know what? I did the agency before when I was doing the production company. It was a very similar model. You'd bid on jobs, you'd get turned. And I was like, I don't really want to do that anymore. I'll just do coaching. I'll just tell people what they need to do. And that was very easy, because I'm used to doing that. That was what I do in consulting and everything. But what kept happening was I would go and lay out, all right, here's the plan. You're going to do these videos. You're going to write this blog, whatever it was, right? And then the business owner would invariably come back to me and go, that's a lot of stuff. I go, yeah, it is. Marketing is really tough. And they go, can you just do it? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to charge you for it. And they're like, no, I'll pay whatever you want. Like, I'll pay. I'm not going to do that. And I go, okay. So like it started with like one guy needing his website done. And I had built websites for a long time as like a side hustle kind of thing. And so like that's actually the out of all the marketing things I've done, I've probably built the most websites out of anything. So I was like, all right, fine. And then it was like an email newsletter for another client. I was like, all right. And there was another person that wanted me to edit their social posts or something. And it kind of snowballed into this to one day I woke up and I owned a marketing agency and I was like, how did this happen? Like this is the exact opposite of what I wanted to happen. But then it just started kind of growing from there. And, you know, it's, you know, as we've modified the coaching practice and the agency in terms of like who we focus on as our target market, it's become a lot easier to run an agency. And a lot of the things I didn't like about running an agency in prior years have kind of sorted themselves out, because once you have a really clear, this is who I'm serving and this is what I sell, and you're not just trying to be a big box agency that, oh, we do everything for everybody, your life just gets so much simpler in terms of the operations.
So, Joe, let me ask you this, and I said this before in other episodes, where, you know, people, when they form their own business, they typically do it because the thing that they like to do. You know, it might be you enjoy building websites, you're good at it. It might be creating videos, you know, you enjoy doing that, you're good at it. I don't think most people start their own business for the business part of it. So,
Yeah.
looking at you, I believe you said you went to school for videography. Is that correct, for film?
Yeah, for film.
Okay, so when it came to running your own business, what did you do to fill in those gaps of knowledge that you didn't necessarily have because you didn't go to school for business?
I've watched more courses and videos and read more books than I could ever count. I've read so many that I forget them until someone's like, "Oh, I just read this great book. You should read it." And they mention, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I read that 20 years ago." It's just one of those things that like I knew I had a knowledge gap, and I did everything in my power to close that as quickly as possible. And so for years and years and years, I would spend 12 hours a day doing nothing but like research and like professional development stuff. And like that's when the phone wouldn't ring, that's all I was doing, was like learning how to make the phone ring. And so like that's one of the things, like when people ask me like should they go to college, I say absolutely not. Like not for marketing, no way, because the skills that it takes to be in marketing are not found in a textbook or a classroom or on a campus. They're found in trial and error. You actually have to get out there and try stuff and put your money on the line, and that's how you're going to be better. It's kind of like, you know, reading a book on how to become a great poker player. It's like you could read a million books on how to become a great poker player. It doesn't mean that when you sit down at the table, the cards are going to fall exactly as they said in the books, right? And so like the value of a formal education for this field in particular, like listen, if you want to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, something where like your education is a mandatory, then obviously you got to go to school, but not for marketing. Anyone can do it. You just need enough time under the bar, they say, right? You need enough time in the field to actually get good at this stuff. And then once you're good at it, it's like you have some kind of like crazy superpower that people will pay you for.
Let's pretend that a family member approaches you and they're
Mhm.
18, 19 years old, whatever, and they're thinking about going into marketing.
Mhm.
Okay. And they say, Drew, what would you recommend? What would you recommend I do? What is the best course of action for me to get into marketing? How would you, your opinion, how would you answer that?
First thing you need is you need to become a really good writer, because that is the foundation of all marketing. It doesn't matter if you're going to do videos or social ads or landing pages, like you have to be a good writer, and you have to understand the science of behavior. So you have to understand behavioral psychology, behavioral economics. You need to understand why people make decisions, the power of persuasion, how to persuade people. And so once you have that knowledge and then you apply that to the skill of writing, now you've become kind of unstoppable, because now you can do anything in marketing, because everything else is pretty easy to learn, right? You take one, you know, 2-3 hour course on Facebook ads, you'll learn how to run Facebook ads. They're not the craziest, hardest things. TikTok ads are even easier to run. Google ads are a little tough. You might have to spend 5 to 10 hours learning that, but you're never going to spend more time than developing the psychological instincts and the writing instincts, because those are the things that are really going to carry you over. And the other part of this is like people get really like, oh, but AI can do this. Like, why do I need to get? Yeah, AI is terrible at writing copy. It's terrible at writing copy because it doesn't understand what good copy is. It just understands what copy is. So when it's being trained and it has thousands of pages going through it, it's not, there's no grading system that says this is great copy. So unless you're building some kind of custom tool, grabbing all the best copy that you know empirically is the best, has performed the best, and then you feed that into it, and then somehow then take that and edit it, it's like, just write the page. You could, in the time it took you to do all that, you could have written 50 landing pages that got progressively better. And so like, that's why, like, we don't use a lot of AI at the agency. And it's not because we shun it. It's just because for most things, we can get there quicker if we just write it. Some things, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Like, especially if it's the kind of copy that we're not expecting people to read, like it's some kind of like footnote thing. And it's like, yeah, just generate it. It's not a big deal. Like, if we're trying to do like citations, like, all right, just put the links in and then have it write up citations. Like, that kind of stuff's fine. But the biggest skill you can learn is to be a good writer.
I've heard many people say that on my show, that writing is such an important skill to acquire. And it doesn't matter what you necessarily go into. And that's also one of these skills that really transverses different careers. If you're changing careers and going down different paths, having that solid foundation in writing is just so important. It seems like it comes up again and again. And that's very cool. I like to hear these things where they kind of they resonate with each other. They kind of build upon each other. This person says writing and that person says writing, and blows up. Writing.
What's weird is, like, when I was going through high school, I never thought I was a particularly good writer, but I was really reading at the time. And so like I was in like an AP writing class. One, because I liked the teacher who was teaching it, but two, because like a lot of it was reading. A lot of it was reading all these like cool kind of books that I really wanted to read. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This will be a good class. And then like when they do the I think it's called the superlatives, like most likely to become a doctor or whatever, right? When they did mine, I was really curious what people were going to say. And at the time, I was really into music, and I was thinking, oh, they're like most likely to record a rock album or something. And they gave me most likely to write a novel. And I was like, what? I'm not even that good at writing. Like, and what made me realize this is that a lot of times the hidden talent, like the underlying talent that you might have in an area, you don't realize you have it yourself. You're in those early years, you're kind of relying on other people to tell you you have it.
Think of all the resources that you've gone through over the course of your career and learning to build your agency. And which resource do you think has paid you back in dividends? It could be an online course you took. It could be a book you've read. It could be a podcast you listened to, someone you spoke to. What is that one resource that just blew all the others out of the water?
I grade things on kind of like 3 tiers. There's the things that saved my business when we were going through like difficult times. And then there's the things that I just think are like absolutely must reads if you want to be in this industry. And then there's like everything else is like, Drew's reading list. And the 2 things that really saved my business, and, just to give you some context, in 2021, I had bought out my partners in April of that year. I started this coaching business with 2 partners. I bought them out in April of that year after working with them for about a year and a quarter. And then my daughter was born a couple of months later. And when my daughter was born, I took some time away from the coaching business. And the day I sent out the announcement that she had been born, I was going to be taking up some time, about 80% of my business evaporated. Like, I just had a wave of cancellation notices come through. And they were all like the nicest cancellations, like, hey, didn't want you worried about us, like, enjoy time with your family and all that. And I'm like, I know they mean well, but they crippled my business. Like, overnight, I went from being, totally in the black, super profitable, to like deeply in the red. And so I needed to figure out how to solve it. And there's 2 things that I did in that time period that like turned everything around. And one was I took Joel Urway's Power Offer course, which is a $27 course. He advertises it all over Facebook. It is the best $27 you'll ever spend. And I didn't even use the strategy he talked about, but he opened my eye. He opened me up to the idea of offers. And then I read Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers. And between those 2 books, I realized what I had been doing wrong, and I fixed it. And then the next year, I think, like, grew 150%, I think, or 200%. It was a lot. It was like it was enough to make me be like, wow, I can't believe was the missing piece. So those two pieces, Joel Urway's power offer, and really you can't go wrong with Joel Urway. He's a brilliant marketer. Anything he puts out is going to be gold. And Alex Hormozi's book, I cannot recommend enough. On the like must reads, I would say like the Adweek copywriting handbook is unbelievable. Copywriting Secrets by, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a Russell Brunson acolyte, is fantastic. And Russell Brunson's first two books, the Traffic Secrets I don't like, but Expert Secrets is really good, and .com Secrets is really good. Those, between those three pieces or five pieces of media, whatever it is, that has all the power you really need. If you just read those books, you could build a great business.
One thing I'd like to do when I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a cause they believe in, a project they're working for, more about their business. So if there's something you'd like to discuss, I want to hand the floor over to you.
I've recently launched a new agency called Keep. And the goal of Keep is really to help businesses modify their practices so that they begin implementing what I call humane capitalism. I think for a long time, there has been two sides of the fence. There has been the, socialist, Marxist, we have to control the means of production, which doesn't work. And then there's the aggressive capitalist angle of we have to grind people to dust and kill everything in our path in order to make the almighty dollar. And I don't think either of those are right. I think there is a humane way to make as much money as you want. And I think by putting people first in your business, starting with your employees and going down the line to your customers and end users, is the way forward. And I think that is what people are going to start seeing over the next decade, is more and more businesses are going to start looking at their practices and saying, you know what, if I treat my employees better, they're going to treat my customers better. My customers are going to like my products more because they're going to feel good about buying my products. And you can already see this happening at a micro level. There's a bunch of businesses out there that are actively practicing this now. And I think the more businesses that start thinking about how can I make this work, not just for me so that I can buy my 15th yacht, but instead, how can I make this the best place to work for my employees? They're going to be shocked at how that translates into profit, because all of a sudden your employee retention goes up, your cost to attract new employees goes down, your customers stay longer, they enjoy your products more, and overall your PR is way in the positive, where a lot of times not many companies benefit from positive PR nowadays. So that's what I'll leave you with, is that if you're a business leader, I really want you to think, are you someone who's actually going out and trying to create businesses that serve people, or just serve your bank account? And if it's serving the bank account, that's fine. That's what we've all been trained as capitalists. But just think, you can have both. You can serve people and your bank account. You don't have to pick one. So that's what I'd leave you with. And if you want more details on that, the link will be in the show notes.
That's awesome. Drew, I love that perspective. It reminds me of what my father said to me when I was younger. He said, if you're in a position of leadership, take care of your people will take care of you. And to an extent, that also transcends and goes to customers as well. You take care of your customers, you treat them like humans, and they're gonna be a little more understanding. They're gonna be more receptive to you as a business, I guess. So I think there's a lot to what you say, and I really, really appreciate that perspective. I just think that is awesome. So I'll make sure I get all of those relevant links from you. I will put them in the show notes. I'll put them in the description. They'll be on my website, tommydiscuss.com, where people can easily find you, find out more about you and your business when they're looking for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Drew, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on Time We Discuss, and we learned what it's like to work at an agency, run your own agency, be a coach, a little bit of everything. It's been absolutely awesome.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you giving me some time today.